Hey there, fellow survivors of 90s teen trauma. Remember when TV shows would hit you with that very special episode warning and you knew you were about to get emotionally wrecked? Those episodes that had us sitting cross-legged on the floor, staring up at the TV, watching our favorite characters deal with stuff way heavier than their usual shenanigans? Today we're diving into 7 very special episodes that explain why Gen X turned out so emotionally damaged, yet strangely resilient. Hit that subscribe button if you're ready to revisit the TV moments that made you feel all the feelings when you were just trying to enjoy your after-school snack. Let's kick things off with perhaps the most meme-worthy, very special episode of all time, Jessie's song from Saved by the Bell, which aired in November of 1990. NBC really said, let's tackle prescription drug abuse, but make it caffeine pills? Look, Bayside High was usually all about Zach Morris's ridiculous schemes and Screech's hopeless pursuit of Lisa Turtle. But then, out of nowhere, perfect student Jessie Spano, Elizabeth Berkley, starts popping caffeine pills to keep up with both her demanding schoolwork and her new singing group with Kelly and Lisa. What followed was the scene that launched 1,000 parodies. Jessie's complete meltdown as she sings, "I'm so excited, I'm so excited, I'm so scared," while Zach holds her.
I'm so excited! I'm so excited! I'm so scared!
If you've never ugly cried to a Pointer Sisters reference before, were you even a 90s kid? The irony is that the writers originally wanted this to be about actual speed, but NBC execs were like, whoa there, this is a Saturday morning show. So they went with caffeine pills instead, accidentally creating something so earnestly melodramatic that it transcended the after-school special formula. But here's what hit hard for Gen X. Behind the unintentional comedy was the very real pressure we all felt to excel at everything. Jessie's perfectionism spoke to an entire generation of kids growing up with unprecedented academic expectations. How many of you felt personally attacked watching Jessie crack under the pressure of trying to be the perfect student? And if you thought Bayside got real, wait until you see what happens when Blossom goes on a date. 2 things defined Blossom: quirky hats and Joey Lawrence saying, whoa. But in 1992, NBC decided to flip the script with The Date, an episode so ahead of its time that it's genuinely impressive looking back. In this episode, Blossom, played by Mayim Bialik, goes on a date with a popular guy who then tries to sexually assault her. She manages to escape, but the aftermath, her processing what happened, questioning if she somehow led him on, and ultimately finding her voice, was groundbreaking television for its time. The scene where she talks to her dad, Ted Wass, about what happened wasn't played for laughs or wrapped up neatly with a bow. It was uncomfortable, messy, and all too real. In 1993, most shows were still using euphemisms for sexual assault, but Blossom tackled it head-on. What makes this episode especially significant is that it aired right when Generation X was navigating the dating world themselves. The early 90s were this weird transitional period. We were moving away from the no means yes garbage of 80s movies, but consent education wasn't exactly part of the curriculum yet. For many Gen X girls, this might have been one of the first times they saw a conversation about date rape on television that didn't blame the victim. Think about that. Before social media, before #MeToo, there was Blossom Russo refusing to stay silent, wearing a floppy hat while doing it, of course. Be honest, how many of you had serious conversations with your friends about this episode the next day at school? And speaking of conversations we weren't ready to have, if you want to know why Gen X has trust issues, look no further than My So-Called Life, the show that was too real to survive. While most episodes focused on Angela Chase, Claire Danes, and her angst, Life of Brian, which aired on November 10, 1994, flipped the perspective to Brian Krakow, the brainy neighbor, perpetually friend-zoned by Angela. This wasn't your typical very special episode about drugs or danger. It was special because it dared to capture the everyday heartbreak of unrequited teenage love with unflinching authenticity. While Angela pines for Jordan Catalano, Jared Leto and his hair, Brian pines for Angela, creating this perfect triangle of longing that felt like a personal attack on anyone who'd ever had an unrequited crush. The genius of this episode is in its mundane pain. There's no dramatic scene where Brian confesses his love. Instead, we get voiceovers of his inner thoughts as he watches Angela watching Jordan. When he ends up at the school dance with another girl who actually likes him, he's still distracted by Angela, who doesn't even notice him. If that doesn't sum up high school in one painful scene, I don't know what does. This episode hit Gen X right in the solar plexus because we were the generation raised on John Hughes movies, where the geek often got the girl in the end. My so-called life said, nope, sometimes love just hurts and keeps hurting. And there's no soundtrack swell when you ride off on a lawnmower together. How many of you saw yourselves in Brian's awkward longing or felt personally called out by the raw emotional honesty of this show? But if emotional devastation is what you're after, just wait until we get to Beverly Hills. Before Beverly Hills 90210 became all about which impossibly attractive adult was dating which other impossibly attractive adult, it actually tackled some serious issues. Case in point, Slumber Party from January 1991, where the show went from rich kids with problems to, oh wait, this is actually devastating. The episode centers around, surprise, a slumber party at Brenda's house, with the core group of girls plus Kelly's mean friend Amanda. What starts as innocent fun turns serious when Amanda bullies Kelly into playing a game of secrets, forcing her to reveal that she was date raped by a popular football player named Ross Weber when she was in 9th grade. What made this episode stand out wasn't just the topic, though that was bold for early 90s Fox, but the way it was handled. Kelly's revelation isn't a very special moment with dramatic music and a PSA at the end. It's a raw, vulnerable confession to her friends, showing that trauma doesn't announce itself. It's just part of people's lives. The show also didn't magically resolve Kelly's trauma by the end of the episode. It became part of her character's ongoing story, influencing her relationships and choices throughout the series. In a TV landscape where most problems were solved in 22 minutes, this was revolutionary. For Gen X viewers, especially girls, this storyline validated experiences many had never seen represented on television before. It acknowledged that sexual trauma was common and that healing isn't linear. Pretty heavy stuff for a show often dismissed as teen fluff. How many of you gained a new respect for 90210 after this episode? And how many secretly wished your high school looked anything like West Beverly? Spoiler, none of our schools had those palm trees in the courtyard. But speaking of relatable high school experiences, wait until you hear about Boy Meets World's take on teenage drinking. Boy Meets World usually gave us wholesome life lessons wrapped in Corey Matthews, Ben Savage, goofy antics, and Mr. Feeney's, William Daniels' wisdom.
Hey, Shawn.
Hey, is this a book of sonnets?
Yes. Why are you giggling?
Am I?
What's the matter with you?
Look into her eyes.
But on March 6, 1998, when ABC aired If You Can't Be With the One You Love, they decided to show the harsh realities of teenage drinking instead. After Topanga breaks up with Corey, he and Shawn attend a college party where they both get drunk. While that might sound like standard teenage fare, what followed was anything but standard sitcom material. Shawn develops a drinking problem, and Corey has to confront his best friend about it. What makes this episode particularly gutting is watching Ryder Strong's performance as Shawn Hunter. Throughout the series, Shawn was the troubled kid from the wrong side of the tracks, always one bad decision away from disaster. When he slips into addiction, it feels tragically inevitable rather than preachy. The episode hits its emotional peak when Shawn, drunk and belligerent, shoves Corey into a door. The look of betrayal and hurt on Corey's face, and the shame on Shawn's when he sobers up, captured the moment when high school friendships start facing adult problems. For late Gen Xers and early millennials watching in 1998, this episode hit close to home because we were navigating the same situations in real life. The pressure to drink, the fear of losing friends to addiction, the realization that some people are more vulnerable to these problems than others. It was all uncomfortably real. And unlike most sitcoms that would wrap everything up neatly, Boy Meets World showed that Shawn's issues with alcohol didn't disappear after this episode. They became part of his ongoing struggle, just like in real life. How many of you had a friend like Shawn who you worried about whenever they started partying too hard? And did anyone else find themselves surprisingly emotional watching a TGIF sitcom? But if you thought that was emotional, grab your tissues because The Fresh Prince is about to destroy us all. We all know The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as the show that gave us Carlton's dance, Jazz getting thrown out the front door, and Will Smith's neon wardrobe. But on May 9th, 1994, NBC aired Papa's Got a Brand New Excuse, and an entire generation collectively sobbed. The setup is straightforward. Will's estranged father, Lou, played by Ben Vereen, suddenly reappears after 14 years. Will is cautiously optimistic about rebuilding their relationship, especially when Lou proposes a father-son road trip. But in a devastating twist, Lou abandons Will again, leading to what might be the most genuine emotional moment in 90s sitcom history. The scene where Will breaks down asking, "Why don't he want me, man?" while being embraced by Uncle Phil wasn't just good acting, it was Will Smith channeling real pain.
I'm sorry, Will.
You know what? Actually, this works out better for me. You know, the slimmies of summer come to class wearing next to nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Will, it's all right to be angry.
Hey, why should I be mad? I'm saying at least he said goodbye this time. I just wish I hadn't wasted my money buying this stupid present.
I'm sorry. If there was something that I
Hey,
could
you know
do-
what? You ain't got to do nothing, Uncle Phil. Hey, ain't like I'm still 5 years old, you know? Ain't like I'm gonna be sitting up every night asking my mom, when's Daddy coming home, you know? Who needs him? Hey, he wasn't there to teach me how to shoot my first basket, but I learned, didn't I? Hey, I got pretty damn good at it too, didn't I,
Yeah,
Uncle Phil?
you did.
Got through my first day without him, right? I learned how to drive, I learned how to shave, I learned how to fight without him. I had 14 great birthdays without him. He never even sent me a damn card. To hell with him! How come he don't want me, man?
According to cast interviews years later, much of that emotion was genuine, with Smith improvising some of his most heartbreaking lines. Uncle Phil meets Smith's raw emotion with such fatherly compassion that you momentarily forget you're watching a sitcom. When he embraces Will, it's like he's holding every abandoned kid who ever wondered what was wrong with them, that their parent couldn't love them. For Gen X viewers, many of whom were growing up in the era when divorce rates had peaked and absent fathers were a common reality, this episode transcended entertainment. It validated feelings that many kept buried: the anger, the hope, the crushing disappointment, and the need for a father figure, even if it wasn't your biological dad. Be honest, how many of you still can't watch this scene without crying? How many have used "I'm not crying, there's something in my eye" when this episode comes on during reruns? And if family trauma is what we're talking about, our final, very special episode might be the most devastating of all. Party of Five wasn't just a very special episode, it was a very special series. The entire premise, 5 siblings raising themselves after their parents die in a car crash, was already emotionally loaded. But in November of 1996, Fox aired The Intervention, taking an already heartbreaking show to new depths. The episode centers around the Salinger siblings confronting oldest brother Charlie, Matthew Fox, about his alcoholism. What makes it particularly wrenching is that Charlie had become the de facto parent after their parents' death. So watching him spiral feels like watching these already traumatized kids lose another parent. The intervention scene is a masterclass in emotional television. Each sibling reads a letter expressing how Charlie's drinking has affected them, with 11-year-old Claudia's letter hitting especially hard as she describes drawing pictures of her brother passed out drunk. When Charlie tries to leave, Bailey physically blocks the door, refusing to let another family member disappear from their lives. What set Party of Five apart from other teen dramas was its unflinching look at grief, addiction, and responsibility. There were no easy solutions, no magical recoveries. Charlie's struggle with alcoholism, like his siblings' ongoing grief, wasn't neatly resolved by the episode's end. For Gen X viewers in 1996, many of whom were in their early 20s and grappling with adult responsibilities for the first time, watching the Salingers struggle to stay afloat as a family hit uncomfortably close to home. The show validated what many of us were feeling, that adulthood is messy, that families are complicated, and that sometimes just holding it together is a victory. How many of you felt a little less alone in your own family struggles after watching the Salingers navigate theirs? And how many still get emotional thinking about these 5 kids trying so hard to be a family without their parents? So there you have it, 7 episodes that prove 90s TV wasn't all laugh tracks and catchphrases. These very special episodes did what great television should. They made us feel seen, they started conversations, and they stayed with us long after the credits rolled. Looking back, it's clear why these episodes hit Gen X so hard. We were the generation coming of age in a time of massive cultural shifts. These shows weren't just entertainment. They were processing collective trauma alongside us, giving us vocabulary for experiences we were still trying to understand. If these episodes left emotional scars on your psyche, smash that subscribe button. Drop a tissue emoji in the comments if you still get choked up thinking about Will Smith's breakdown or Jessie Spano's caffeine-fueled meltdown. And tell us which very special episode hit you the hardest. We know there are plenty we didn't cover. Until next time, remember, it's okay to cry over fictional characters from 30 years ago. After all, they're the ones who taught us how to feel in the first place.